Hey, everybody. Hope you're having a great week at Blitz 21. I'm your host, Brendan Hall, for this next segment. None other than Brian Newberry, defensive coordinator at the United States Naval Academy. Brian, it is a bit of an Oklahoma takeover this week. We got you from Oklahoma City. We got three Tulsa area high school coaches. You guys are slowly creeping your way onto this schedule. So hats off to you.
Awesome. Yeah, some good football coaches in the high school ranks here in Oklahoma for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Interesting season for you guys. Obviously, interesting season for everybody, I think, in college football. But one of the reasons we brought you on here is your philosophy is so unique and so interesting. I want to hear more about it. Let's start off with that. I especially love this Get Six rule that you guys have. I want to hear all about what you guys do.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on. First of all, I really appreciate what you guys do and the format that Huddle's created, the opportunities and that you guys have given high school athletes, and just making things easier for them to get their film out and for us to evaluate it. And you guys have a great product, and really appreciate that. And so it's an honor to be on here. Honored to be here representing the Naval Academy. This is a special place. I think we have the best and the brightest young men in the country. It's a privilege to coach here. I park right outside the window down by the water here, and if you're looking out the window at me when I pull up, some days you might see me skipping in to the office. So it's a dream come true for me. I love being here. We've got an unbelievable staff. I think we've got the best head coach in the country, Coach Niamataololo, who's done a phenomenal job of building a culture and a standard here, and I'm just happy to be a part of it. You asked about the Get Six. That was and my first year here 2 years ago, that was a pretty popular topic because we were pretty good at creating that and making that happen every week. This past season, not quite as good. But the philosophy kind of came about, when I was at Kennesaw State, it was always get three. We wanted to get three takeaways in the course of a game. We felt like, if we could do that, that our chances of winning games greatly increased, obviously. That's a pretty standard deal. But when I got here, I kind of wanted to fine line it a little bit. So went back over the last 10 years or so with the help of our sports information director, Scott Strassmeyer, who does a fantastic job here. And I was kind of looking for a cutoff or a number. And initially it was get five. And I'll pull up a little slideshow here. Talked about the culture, right? Um,
Yeah.
of love, and that's something Coach Niamataololo is big on, and comes right from the top. And he practices what he preaches. But we want to be the closest team in the country. Going back to the brotherhood, we want to be the most selfless team in the country. We talked about the big team, little me. We want to be the most disciplined team in the country. We want to be the toughest team in the country. So those are kind of our standards and things that we talk about a lot around here in our culture, things that are going to help us not only succeed here, but when we get done here at the Naval Academy. Talked about the force multiplier being a brotherhood and just how much these guys care about each other. The great thing about our guys is they are. When I first got here, I said, "Look, we're not as talented as most of the teams that we're going to play, and that's nothing to be embarrassed or upset about. But they're smart enough to understand that. They don't take that as a slight. They take it as a challenge. Our guys have a chip on their shoulder. We're always the underdog, and I love coaching guys that feel that way. And so they know what they've got to do to make up for it. We talked about the E, being the effort, attitude, and toughness. The intangible piece, how important that is here. Measure who we are is what we do, what we have, right? How do you get great effort? We just talked about that. It's got to come from the top. Coaches are coaching with passion and energy all the time. It's got to be taught. You got to define it and drill it. We define it for our guys. We talk about it all the time. The next slide is how we define a loaf. This is also up in all of our meeting rooms. I don't know if you've ever seen that before. So we want our guys to specifically know, what a loaf looks like. And there's actually different kinds, and you wouldn't necessarily think that. But at the end of the day, anything less than 100% effort is a loaf. On Mondays, we get together as a unit. We call it the circle of trust. So like I said, we track these things, right? So if you're a guy that had a loaf during the course of the game or a penalty, we're going to go around that circle, and you're going to come out in the middle. You're going to state your name. I'm Brian Newberry. I had one too many LOAFs, I had one foolish penalty, all right, and everybody's going to do up downs for you. Just as a reminder, right, how accountable we are to one another. And we'll kill back out of the circle. Next guy come up, and we'll go all the way around as long as that takes. Typically, it doesn't take very long around here because our guys play really, really hard. But we call that circle of trust around here. Define what toughness is. We talk about physical toughness all the time as coaches. We want guys that are aggressive physically, but we also want guys that are mentally tough. And so, we define that for them. I think that's a pretty good definition of mental toughness that we use there. It's just some of the things that we do. We talk about our guys that are what are important on playing good defense. What are some of the common characteristics of a really good defense is obviously getting lined up nowadays with all the motion, formations, things like that is a challenge in and of itself. I feel like if you can get lined up, be in a great stance, know what you're doing, all right, run to the ball with that elite effort that we talked about, be great at attacking and getting off of blocks, being disruptive with what we do schematically, being great tacklers, and then getting off field on third down, we got a chance to win a lot of games. We talk to them all the time about, the team that plays the hardest and makes the fewest mistakes typically wins a football game. Most of the time wins a football game. That's kind of our, who we are, how we're made up a little bit from a recruiting standpoint and all that. We say we're base 4-2-5, some 3-4 principles. We'll have some 3-3 principle stuff in there too. Talk about the hybrid raider, the striker, which is our hybrid outside, safety, SAM body type, multiple fronts and coverages, dynamic. So we're never going to be static. We're always moving pre and post snap, multiple blitz packages. Everybody in our defense is a potential blitzer. That's a good selling point for some recruits. I love the motto: apply pressure, don't feel it. Don Brown talks about aggression solving a lot of problems. I believe in that. And just philosophy overall is some things that a lot of these we already hit on, Brendan, earlier. But having a base that you believe in, a catch-all for us, that's field under quarter halves. Our kids know that we can get lined up to anything that we see in that particular front and coverage. Then you build everything off of that. Having a niche, thinking outside the box. I mentioned being a chef, not a cook already. Players should understand your philosophy and the why behind it. Nowadays everybody wants to know why, so it's important to make sure your players understand, why you do this, why you do that, why it's important. So when you ask them a question, the answer should be black and white, not gray. It should be very direct in their knowledge of what we do and why we do it. We talked about the flexibility built into your system based on what we see from offenses around the country nowadays, just the multiplicity of that. Effort above everything else, around here, that's non-negotiable. It doesn't matter how talented you are. If you don't give it, you're not going to play here. Our guys know that. And, we're to the point now where we really don't have to preach it. Our players do. You have a player-led team like that, in that regard, that's what you want. So we talked about being difficult to prepare for. That's part of having a niche. And then disrupting the early downs, got field on third down. We talked about that. Get 6, win the intangibles, win the game. Love for the game, love each other. The get 6 is any combination of a takeaway, a 3 and out, or a 4th down stop, turnover on downs, essentially. So when I got here in 2019, we 140 possessions on the season. We achieved that get 6 deal in a bunch of games. We were 72 out of 140 possessions of getting one of those 3 things. So about 51%. That year. This past season, not so good. We dropped about 20%, and you can see the difference in the win-loss column. But when we were able to hit that number 6 marker for us, we in the last 2 years we've been 10-0 here. And then on the other hand, when we've not gotten that, we've been 3-10. So it's been a pretty good indicator of not just us having success on the defensive side of the football, but obviously in the win-loss column for a football team. So, when you think about that, if you can create a takeaway or you can force a 3 and out, a lot of times you're gonna put your offense in good position and really good field position. And the other thing about being here at the academy is that if our offense is clicking the way it should be, you may not play as many possessions as other people do. So 6 for us maybe different than it is for some other people, maybe different than in high school than it is in college. But that kind of seems to be the magic number for us. And we feel like if we can do that with limited amount of possessions that people get against us, then we're going to be in pretty good shape. I think when we got that number, gave it right around 19, 20 points a game. So it's been a pretty good indicator for us. It's a great measuring stick for our guys. We talk about it all the time. Around here, a 3 and out is like a takeaway. Essentially, you think about our offense grinding out a long drive, a 12, 14 play drive that takes 6 or 7, 8 minutes off the clock. If an offense comes out and goes 3 and out and we're right back on the field, that's demoralizing for our opponents. Not only does the defense not have time to go over the sideline, make adjustments, catch your breath, and all that kind of stuff, it keeps an offense out of rhythm as well. So we put maybe a greater emphasis on the 3 and outs than maybe a lot of people do because, like I said, I think it's like a takeaway around here essentially.
When you're able to tie metrics like that to a finite goal, I think it's pretty powerful. I think I heard somewhere that in the NFL, 90% of games with a punt block are won by the blocking team. And when you communicate that to your guys, it's easy to get them to buy into the little stuff that adds up. When you communicate this to your players, what kind of a motivating factor is that for them?
Well, I think that they're always thinking about it. When you can't just expect to get takeaways without preaching it, without talking about it, without drilling it and doing those kind of things. So I think you get what you emphasize. And there's a Get 6 emblem in every meeting room in our building, so the kids see it all the time. The other thing I forgot to mention, there's 6 stripes in our uniforms, and those represent the first 6 frigates of the Naval Academy, of the Navy. Those are destroyer boats, obviously, and so that was a coincidence, but a pretty cool deal that the 6 matched up with that. But anyways, I missed that part of it. But yeah, it's when you can put a finite number with a philosophy and use it as a measuring stick, and it's not 100%, but when I put these numbers up, which I intend to do when we hit on it going into spring ball again, I think our kids will understand the importance of it. And you go 10-0 when you get that, that's a pretty good motivator for our guys. And they want to go 3 and out. Our staff just got back from Norfolk, Virginia, visiting with the Navy SEAL unit. And one thing they talked about on their missions was, they want to be brief, they want to be brilliant, they want to be gone. All right, and that's how we want to be on defense. We want to take the field, be brief, be brilliant, be gone, be off of it as fast as we can, get the ball back to our offense. And so that's kind of our approach here. Sounds counterintuitive because you want to play football, but you want to get on and off the field as fast as you can when you play defense.
Yeah. You mentioned beginning this talk that, and I think people will agree with you here as far as Ken Niumatalolo's place among the best coaches in the country. I think people are always fascinated by how you guys do it because there's a certain type of athlete you're allowed to recruit at the Naval Academy. And so there's this whole more with less philosophy, I think, that service academies tend to play with. And there's actually some creative liberations that come with that, incidentally. So love to hear more about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got some great players here. There's no doubt about that. I don't want to shortchange our guys. And we go out and recruit. We try to find the best players that we can find. But obviously, there's a profile that you're looking for, and not just physical profile, but personality profile and those kind of things. And so, our guys understand that our roster is not laced with 3 and 4 and 5-star players. That's not who we are. And so, how are we going to make up that difference? And the things that we talk about around here a lot are the intangibles. How can we, whatever physical gap that we have versus our opponents, whatever talent gap there is, how can we minimize that? The thing that we always talk to our defensive players about, we use an acronym around here. The spells EAT, stands for effort, attitude, and toughness. We put elite in front of that. We want to be the best in those 3 categories. Those are the pillars of our program. Those are the pillars of our standard on defense. And so we want to play harder than anybody in the country. We want to be the toughest team in the country. And so we feel like if we can do that and we can make up for that talent gap as much as possible, and that, at the end of the day, that'll give us a chance to win games.
If you could tell me a little bit more about your player development, your guys' approach with that.
Sure. Well, it's you get them here. Obviously, you want to develop your guys physically, and you want to maximize who they are. Our strength and conditioning staff here, we've got a nutrition staff as well. They do a phenomenal job with that. The Naval Academy is a little different. We don't redshirt guys, so we don't have them for 5 years like some programs do. And in a perfect world, you'd like to redshirt your program, every freshman that comes into your program, so they can grow and develop and learn the system. And we do have some guys coming in from the prep school, so some of those guys come in a little bit more developed to get one more year than others. So it's hard for a freshman to play right away, obviously. But we want to establish first and foremost the things that I talked about with our culture. The things that don't take any physical talent necessarily or metric, but things that we can control, and we want to be as good as we possibly can be at those things, be elite at those things, and we think that's the difference here. And we develop our players here. There's a mission here at the academy. Obviously, our academy develops young men as well. We try to reinforce those things. And so we've got an advantage in that regard. We've got tough kids. We've got smart kids. We've got kids that are resilient. And so, from a physical aspect, we've got to bring those guys along as much as we possibly can. They face some challenges here that maybe some other schools don't face. May get a little less sleep here. May sit in the classroom a little longer than kids do at other places. But there's certain advantages we have as well. But yeah, we've, defensively, we talk about developing the 4 core skill sets at each position, skills that are, specific to your position group, and really dialing in on those and trying to master those and get as good as possible as we can at those. But I think the cultural piece is the biggest piece for us as far as the development here, that I think is going to give us a chance to be different, separate us from everybody else.
Do you think almost there is, despite the limited pool you're able to recruit from, there's actually an advantage of that because of the standard?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously we have to recruit on a national level. The great thing that I've learned about being here is you got a collection of some of the best and the brightest student athletes from around the country. Add into that you're recruiting a player that comes here that's willing to serve their country, and there's a lot to be said for that. So I think you're getting a player, a young man that's cut from a little bit different cloth. They're willing to do that. Typically getting a guy that's a little more mature than maybe the base is, and so highly intelligent young men here, and so that's fun to work with. It allows you to do some things that you might not be able to do at other places.
I want to get into that a little more too, about the intelligence level and what that allows you to do defensively with what kind of looks that you give.
Right. Well, we've got smart players, but we also have time limitations.
Yeah.
The Naval Academy, our guys aren't hanging around the building all day over here like you might see at Auburn or Alabama or someplace like that. So they've got a full class load. And so we only get them a certain amount of time a day. And when we do that, we have to be super efficient with our time. And obviously we want to take advantage of what our strengths are and try to minimize our weaknesses. And our strengths are that we have intelligent players that can handle a lot. And there's always that fine line of taking advantage of that, but not taking too much advantage of it to where we're slowing guys down, so having to think too much. But it's certainly an advantage, and it's something that we'll give them as much as they can handle. And I'm always trying to find that balance as a coordinator and allowing them to play fast, but also taking advantage of their minds and letting them go out and do some things that you might not be able to do at other places necessarily.
When you say limited time, can you tell me a little bit more about that and what challenges that presents to you for your installation?
Sure. Well, our guys are in class in the morning, every morning, and every afternoon. We get them at lunchtime for about 50 minutes, and then we catch them at practice. So we don't have multiple meetings in a day. We don't have guys hanging around the building watching cut-ups or getting extra film study during the day. And the academic load here is tough, and so at night our guys need to study. They need to spend time working on academics, and so they've got to really be good and diligent about managing their time and creating extra time to watch film and do some extra stuff on their own time. And so, but it forces us to be really efficient, with the way we meet. Forces you to prioritize things, and it also forces you, once you get on the practice field, to be really efficient with your time, because our practices are relatively short and crisp as well.
So how do you go about making the most out of this limited time? What are the keys there?
Well, I think the key, like I said, Brandon, is being really efficient. One advantage we have here are our numbers. We carry more guys on our roster than most FBS teams do. And so, during the fall, when we're getting ready for another team, we have 2 full scout teams. And so we can typically get a lot more reps in a shorter amount of time than most people do. And so we take advantage of that. And, but again, it's prioritizing things, excuse me, and then being efficient with your time.
Tell me about your approach with how you deploy your players, and we talked a little bit before about some of the creativity that goes into that, and maybe not so much with just mixing and matching personnel, but just the way you deploy your players on a defense. So just we talk a little more about that, about your approach there.
Well, you always have a philosophy that you believe in, and a scheme that you believe in, but you also have to be flexible within that scheme. And I think what we do and the way we're built allows us to be somewhat flexible. We've typically had 2 different personnel groupings that we use. We'll dabble in a third one this year, but always trying to find a way to take advantage of our personnel and to make sure that like I said earlier, we're taking advantage of what our strengths are and minimizing what our weaknesses are, and putting guys in positions to be successful. You can draw a lot of things up on a board, but if your players can't execute those things, then they're not very good, right? And so obviously we got a great culture in place. We know our kids are going to play extremely hard. We don't want to slow them down, but we also understand that the scheme helps when your culture is good. If the culture is not good, it doesn't mean anything, right? And so, but we're always looking for those advantages, and we try to be unique here. Obviously, we run the option on offense, which is a niche. Allows us a little bit of an equalizer, right? This is a chance to win. It's hard to prepare for in 3 days if you're an opponent. And then on defense, when I got here, I took the same approach, taking kind of an offensive approach. We want to be unique. We want to be different. We want to be hard to prepare for. When people play us, I hope that the offensive coordinator spend a little extra time in the office that week, worrying about some things and trying to figure some things out. And I think, what we do, sometimes it looks a little bit chaotic and complex, but part of that's illusion. We want to look that way, but in the grand scheme of things, we try to keep things as simple as we can. So kind of simple, organized chaos, if you will. But we want to be hard to prepare for. We want to be a defense that puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback as far as what he sees and the decisions he makes and the looks that he gets. We want to confuse and affect him. We want to do the same with the offensive line. So you'll see us line up in one front, stem to another front before the snap. A lot of post-snap movement. Typically not as big as a lot of teams up front, but pretty athletic. So we try to take advantage of that. And that's an example of us doing some things that, fit our personnel and help us schematically. And if we're going to be disruptive and do some things that I believe you have to do on defense nowadays, and we're going to have to do those things and confuse people and, try to get people behind the sticks in the early downs by being disruptive. And if you can do that, and I think you get a better chance of getting off field, obviously on third down, because now you're putting people in third and longer type situations, getting them off track a little bit. And then I think once we get people in those situations, that's when we've been a little bit more creative with some of the looks that we've shown people and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Because I feel like sim pressures and stuff of that sort, there's a lot more diversity to how your typical defense is misdirecting the offense now, it seems like. And what makes for an unpredictable approach? Like what goes into that? What are the keys there?
I think the way that you're built defensively and the flexibility, we're multiple. We're personnel wise, we play with a hybrid end who's a stand-up guy for us. So it allows us to get into an even front, allows us flexibility to be in an odd front. And so there's a lot of different ways you can bring a fourth rusher when you're in that odd front. We're not a team, Brennan's going to line up in 4 down, 4 guys in stance, and like the Tampa Bay Bucks did in Super Bowl, and it looks like they're blitzing, and getting pressure with 4. It's just not how we're built. It's not who we are, and our guys know that. And so we've got to find creative ways when we do rush 4. As you mentioned, the simulated pressures, bringing a second level guy in a different way, maybe overloading the side and that kind of thing. But I think, for us, what we try to do is we show some looks where, we'll show a 7 or a 6 up look where we'll bring everybody, and we may drop everybody. And so we try to put some pressure pre-snap on the quarterback and the O-line, and try to confuse those guys and try to hopefully maybe limit what an offensive coordinator can carry when we get into those looks, and kind of maybe try to determine the type of protection that we're going to get from week to week, and hopefully be able to take advantage of that when we do decide to rush 3 or 4 and maybe get a matchup on the back or something like that, where we have a chance to win and get a little bit of pressure on the quarterback.
We talked about this before, but the trend, I feel like this year in college football is certainly a lot of teams doing outside zone and kind of back to run. You see defenses in sub more than ever, I feel like, just because of how much more teams are passing the ball. I'm curious if you see the pendulum swinging the other way at any point, and just where you see it all going.
Yeah. I don't know. It seems like it always does in football, right? It always comes back around. It's constantly evolving and circulating. I think, the part of what we see offensively nowadays is entertainment. People want to see people go fast. They want to see people throw the ball, and as long as that's going on, then that's not going to change. But I certainly do think that teams that are looking for a niche, used to be the spread might have been a niche. You know what I mean? Or things that Coach Leach did, and throwing the ball around were a niche. And now it's not. Now the 2 and 3 tight end sets have become more of a niche, not something you see every week. And so I think there's always going to be teams that are outliers. Teams that academic schools, academies, things like that are always going to do something that's against the grain a little bit. But you're right. I think nowadays in your base, you almost have to be built different than we used to. You don't really see a lot of teams play with, at least we don't play with a traditional Sam linebacker like you used to. That guy's more of a hybrid guy now, a guy that can do some things in coverage that you might not ask, a traditional Sam linebacker to do. And then we take that, we call it a Raider. That's our boundary defensive end, who's a hybrid for us. And he's a guy now that can drop out in space and do some things coverage wise that your true defensive end, you wouldn't want to ask him to do that very often, And so I think what you're seeing nowadays, Brennan, a lot of people in their base have some more flexibility with their personnel. They're getting more speed on the field, more athletes on the field. And so when you do go play now, like you mentioned, a team that deploys 2, 3 tight ends, now you've got to adjust. Now people are going back to, what used to be their traditional Sam linebacker and those type of things. So, yeah, it's always changing, but the pendulum will certainly swing back around a little bit. Just don't know how long it's going to take to get it there.
Eventually, every right answer is the wrong answer, and so forth, right?
That's right. Right about it.
Absolutely. Brian, I want to give you a floor for anything else you might add. We're coming up on a little over half an hour here. Want to make sure I give you a floor for anything else you wanted to mention here, and certainly how people can talk, keep the conversation going with you. So.
Well, I think I think the thing that gives us a chance to win here are things that are overlooked a lot. We talk about, it's a military term that I like to use around here called a force multiplier. A force multiplier in a tangible term is, if one guy has your grenade and one guy doesn't, well, that grenade has let's say a force multiplier of 10. You know what I mean? So that the guy with the grenade is more likely to win that battle, right? And so the thing that's unique and special about this place, and one thing that I love about this place is what we call the brotherhood. These guys go through a lot together. They suffer together. They love each other. They care about each other. And that brotherhood here is kind of that force multiplier for us. The thing that people don't see. You take 5 guys or 11 in our sport that love each other, that trust each other, that care about each other, that are selfless, that believe in the big team, little me, against 11 guys that don't. Well, that's a significant advantage, and that's something that our guys know, something that they take a lot of pride in. And I know it's something that all coaches are trying to develop in their program. I think in this day and age, with some of the changes that are coming down the pipe in college football, the transfer portal and those kind of things, I think that gets pushed to the side a little bit, which I think is probably good for us, because that's something that we believe in and something that we dive into. And I think really something that separates us. And not that it's overlooked. Probably shouldn't say that, but I do think that's something that sets our guys apart from others.
Well, there you go again, taking the disadvantage, changing the context, making an advantage again, right?
Right. That's right. That's what we're trying to do around here. But, we're constantly trying to, think outside the box. I've got a sentence up on my grease board in here. It says, be a chef, not a cook. I'd encourage all the coaches out there, not just coordinators, but position coaches, to always try to think outside the box. And don't just do things because that's the way they've always been done. And we all steal things, and everything that I've done, I've gotten from somebody else. But don't be afraid to merge ideas, to take one thing and put your own spin on it or tweak it a little bit. Take a bunch of ingredients that you get from other people, and not just X's and O's, but the way that people coach, the way that they teach, and throw those into a pot and cook something else. Cook something up yourself. Try to create a niche and be different. And if you find yourself coaching guys that are a little bit less talented or not as big or fast or strong as other teams, and where can you make up that gap? Where can you take advantage of? Always look to take advantage of what your strengths are and try to maximize those. And then obviously, good coaches minimize what their deficiencies are. Try to find ways to do that as well.
Let's talk about being a chef. Makes me a little bit hungry. So
yeah, me too.
Brian, this has been fantastic. I want to thank you for taking the time and wish you good luck in 2021.
Thank you so much. Enjoyed it.